all have to adopt. What is right in Tel Aviv will be even more in Chicago, in Delhi, and in Afghanistan.
We should have something that does not press mandatory vaccinations, but doesn't put us in the back of the line either. If we are facing a 2021 with the same level of the kaleidoscope of application of recommendations, it's just going to continue to make it challenging for us to recover.
So that wraps this hour of CNN. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm Robyn Curnow. I'm going to hand you over to my colleague Kim. He takes over for the next hour.
No rest for the weary. Senate Democrats refused to let Republicans call it a night, demanding a so-called vote-a-rama on the COVID relief bill amendments. Then, a historic moment in Christian-Muslim relations as the Pope meets Iraq's Grand Ayatollah. And later, the vaccine hits the road. CNN rides along with a mobile vaccination team getting shots in the most vulnerable arms. Live from CNN World Headquarters in Atlanta, welcome to all of you watching here in the United States, Canada, and around the world. I'm Kim Brunhuber. This is CNN Newsroom. The U.S. Senate is in session this hour, powering through amendment after amendment as they grapple with the president's $1.9 trillion relief bill. The process, called a vote-a-rama, got started only after Democrats compromised with each other to end an epic 11-hour-long roll call vote, the longest in recent history. We'll have more on that in a moment. Now, the vote-a-rama will likely last for some time since Republicans have drafted more than 100 amendments. They say the bill is too expensive, but Democrats say it's the only way forward.
Senate Democrats are completely united in our belief about how important this entire bill is for our fellow Americans, for getting the vaccine to our people, for reopening our schools, for keeping American workers, families, and businesses afloat, and for putting our country on the road to a strong recovery.
They're dead set on ramming through an ideological spending spree packed with non-COVID-related policies, but only 9% addresses the fight against the virus itself. We are already on track to bounce back from this crisis. That's not because of this bill. It's because of our work last year.
Our Ryan Nobles was there on Capitol Hill during those marathon negotiations between Democrats on Friday, and he's got more on that and the rest of the day's developments.
The Senate is inching closer to passing that COVID relief package that will deliver some $1.9 trillion worth of aid to Americans from coast to coast, but it hasn't been an easy process. The Senate Republicans putting up roadblocks along the way, including throwing a potential alternative to the unemployment insurance extension that was put in the bill originally by the House. Now, Democrats had already changed the plan, going from $400 a week to $300 a week, but extending it out till the end of September, but also including a tax credit of up to $10,000 for individuals that receive this unemployment insurance benefit. Now, Republicans thought that was too much, and they offered up a plan that would end the unemployment benefit in July, and that piqued the interest of West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin. So for several hours on Friday, the two sides hammered out an alternative plan because Manchin was considering supporting the Republican version, which would have been dead on arrival when this bill heads back to the House of Representatives. They settled on a plan where it would be $300 a check. It would expire on September 6th. There would still be that tax credit in place, but it would only be eligible to people who make less than $150,000 a year. That then kicked in the process known as vote-a-rama, which is a part of a process when you have a bill that's passed through reconciliation, which means that it only needs 51 votes to pass. This is the opportunity for any senator to offer up an amendment to the bill that needs to be voted up or down before it can get out of the Senate. And that process has continued throughout Friday night into Saturday morning. We're not exactly sure when it will all wrap up, but at the end of all of this, we expect Democrats will have the votes they need to pass this legislation. It will then go back to the House before the House passes it, and then it goes to President Biden for his signature. Still could be some wrinkles along the way before we get to that point, but Democrats crossed a big hurdle by getting Manchin's support for that unemployment insurance. We're not exactly sure how long this process will last, but Democrats are hoping that they have this bill passed and on the president's desk by March 14th. Ryan Nobles, CNN on Capitol Hill.
Now, one Democratic senator was the subject of much debate on social media, not just for her vote, but for how she delivered it. This is Arizona Democrat Kristen Sinema literally voting thumbs down on an amendment putting a minimum wage provision back into the relief bill. The gesture was reminiscent of the moment in 2017 when late Arizona Senator John McCain's thumbs down ended efforts to kill Obamacare. But Sinema angered many. CNN's Abby Phillip offered some perspective here.
First of all, I'm not sure it's entirely fair to assume that she was being flippant by doing that. I mean, if you know Senator Sinema, she's a colorful personality. So that's kind of how she operates. But beyond that, I also think that, look, the moderate Democrats are making a calculation that they can engage on this issue down the road separately and perhaps for a lower degree, a lower level, less than $15. And so they don't want to deal with this in the COVID bill. And I kind of take them at their word on that. I think it's not just a moderate Democratic position. There are a lot of moderate Republicans who are willing to do that. So that's certainly the case. I get that progressives, however, feel like this is the train that is moving out of the station. It should be in it right now. And that is why you're going to see a lot of anger directed at Sinema and Manchin and those others, the 6 others Democrats who voted against this amendment.
Well, as senators debate on Capitol Hill, President Joe Biden is still working to drum up support for his plan. He says Friday's jobs report shows exactly why the legislation is necessary. White House correspondent Jeremy Diamond has that.
Well, as the Senate began debate on this coronavirus relief bill, President Biden continued to make the case on Friday for the urgent need to pass this nearly $2 trillion package. President Biden making that case despite the fact that we saw a much more positive jobs report released on Friday. 379,000 jobs gained over the previous month. That was exceeding expectations, but the president insisting that this relief is not only still needed, but that really it's meant to ensure that the economy doesn't take one step forward and another step back.
Today's jobs report shows that the American Rescue Plan is urgently needed in our view. Our economy still has 9.5 million fewer jobs than it had this time last year. And at that rate, it would take 2 years to get us back on track. The sum of last month's job growth is a result of the December relief package. But without a rescue plan, these gains are going to slow. We can't afford one step forward and 2 steps backwards.
And the White House is also pointing out that if the economy continued to add jobs at the same rate of this Friday jobs report, it would take until April of 2023 to reach pre-pandemic economic levels. I asked the White House press secretary on Friday how many months, how many years would be shaved off that timeline. She said that the White House believes, according to their estimates, they could reach pre-pandemic economic levels 1 year sooner with this $1.9 trillion package. Jeremy Diamond, CNN, the White House.
A former State Department appointee under the Trump administration is being charged in connection to the deadly insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. Investigators say Federico Klein was seen in videos like this one during the attack. He's accused of fighting against a police line and using a riot shield to prop open a door. So far, about 300 people have been charged with federal crimes related to the siege. Well, here we seem to have returned home. Those were the words of Pope Francis as he stood on the ancient plains of Ur, Iraq, moments ago, the place where it's believed Abraham was born. Right now, Pope Francis is wrapping up an interfaith meeting in Ur, which is near the city of Nasiriyah, before heading to Baghdad. It's been a very busy day for the Pope, his second in the country. He met hours ago with the revered Shia cleric Grand Ayatollah Ali al-Sistani in the holy city of Najaf. Senior international correspondent Ben Wedeman is in Baghdad. Ben, a really momentous day for people of many faiths.
Indeed, in fact, and really this first event of Pope Francis's schedule today was hugely significant. He is meeting with one of the leading authorities of Shia Islam, Grand Ayatollah Ali Sistani. Keep in mind, Kim, that back in 2019, he signed a document of fraternity with Ahmed Tayyib, who is the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, which is one of the leading authorities of Sunni Islam. So he's really trying to make sure that he's covering all his bases in his efforts to build bridges of fraternity and dialogue with Islam. And after the meeting, a statement was put on behalf of the Grand Ayatollah Ali Sistani, who, bolstering the other important message of Pope Francis that the Christians of Iraq should stay here, the Grand Ayatollah said that Christians should live in peace and security with full constitutional rights. It's important to remember that during the war with ISIS, many of the Christians who fled those areas that ISIS seized took refuge in the city of Najaf itself, were provided with shelter and means of sustenance, all of by the Shia down there. And so this meeting is important, and equally so this event that he attended in Ur with the representatives of all the many religious sects and trends in Iraq. Keep in mind that Iraq, particularly the northern part of the country, has a huge number of various different religions and sects, some of them dating back to before the birth of Christ. And of course, we know that once he's done with all those events in the southern part of the country, he's coming back to Baghdad to hold a church service. And of course, tomorrow he's heading to the north, where he will, among other things, pray in a church that was destroyed by ISIS when it occupied the city. Kim?
So obviously there's great, symbolism to this visit, but is there any sense that it might have some tangible or longer lasting effects after he leaves, or is that too much to hope for at this point?
It's difficult to say, but the fact that he was able to visit, that he announced this trip back in December, the step-by-step of his schedule in Iraq was made public, and that it's such a high-profile visit, to many Iraqis says things are changing. Keep in mind, for instance, that President George W. Bush, President Obama, and President Trump, every time they came to Iraq, it was a tightly guarded secret. They showed up, they quickly spent most of their time mostly meeting with U.S. and coalition forces, very brief, low-profile visits with Iraqi leaders, and then they were gone. The Pope is really doing a state visit, the likes of which Iraq has not seen for years. So whether you are a Christian or a Muslim, a Yazidi or whatever, this trip really does represent a dramatic change from what Iraq was, say, 15 years ago. Whether it's going to have long-term consequences, that's very difficult to say. But certainly the tone of the visit and the coverage in the Iraqi media and the comments people are making are almost universally positive, indicating that there is hope that this trip will indeed, Kim, have a lasting impact.
Great points there. Thank you so much, Ben Wedeman in Baghdad. All right, coming up on CNN Newsroom, how long before the U.S. could begin to get back to some sense of normalcy? A recent CNN analysis may give us a clue. Stay with us.